Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings here on Now TV. My name is Don K. Preston. I'm the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. I do appreciate you being with me. I hope that your week has gone well. I tell you, here in southern Oklahoma, we've had some fantastic rain, and today has been one of those just marvelously beautiful days. Hasn't been overly hot. The wind has been a little bit gentle. And I mean, it's just one of those days, that you just feel alive. You just appreciate being alive so very, very much. So anyway, thanks again for joining me. And we want to get right into my presentation. Now remember, we are examining the challenge of Christ. The challenge of Christ is John chapter 10 and verse 37, where Jesus said, he said in front of a hostile crowd. Now see, this is part of the power of that context. Jesus isn't standing in front of a group of friends and people who believe in him and who would say, when he issued the challenge, who would say, oh, we don't have to do that. We love you. We appreciate you. We believe in you. No. Jesus was standing in front of a hostile, unbelieving crowd. And he issued his challenge. If I do not do the works that my Father has given me, do not believe me. Now, as I have said on many occasions, ladies and gentlemen, none of the other world religions, Judaism comes the closest, obviously, because it is a, quote, historical religion. But none of the other major world religions issue a challenge and say, investigate our historical claims, investigate what we said that the prophet did here or the prophet did there, and if they're not true, then don't believe in him. Don't believe in Hinduism. Don't believe in Buddhism. Don't believe in this and don't believe that, if in fact the historical claims are not true. Jesus is distinctive. I was visiting with a friend of mine, probably about a year ago. And to be quite honest, he had led a really, really sheltered life. He had begun to be exposed to some Muslim believers. He had been exposed to some atheists. He had been exposed to some, different viewpoints for the very first time in his life. And he's a grown man, married with with children. He had never been confronted by a Muslim, never been confronted by an atheist. And he took me aside and he said, Don, I have to tell you, I don't have answers for some of these people. He said, in my conversation with the Muslim, he said, I didn't know how to answer. And he said, when the atheist attacked me like he did, challenging my faith, he said, Don, I'm ashamed to admit it, I was lost. I didn't have any answers. So essentially, I shared with him the challenge of Christ, and he said, that's what they were hitting me with. They were saying Jesus didn't do what he said he was going to do. I didn't have an answer. So I shared a few things with him, and he was like, oh my goodness. He said, I wish I'd have known those things. I could have answered. But he said, Don, I've never been confronted like that before in my life. And ladies and gentlemen, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, perhaps even millions of Christian believers who are in the same boat. I have asked you, I have challenged you over the last 2 years. How do you meet the challenge of Christ? He said he was coming back in the first century generation. Did he do it? You got to be able to answer that question. If you maintain a belief in a time-ending, earth-burning, cosmos-destroying event, at which time every living, breathing human being who has ever lived and died in their history of the world and decomposed in the ground is suddenly reconstituted and revived and raised out of the ground, if that remains your concept, then you cannot meet or answer the challenge of Christ. You simply cannot do it. You cannot be honest with the linguistics, with the Greek text, with the Hebrew text. You cannot be honest with Hebraic apocalyptic language. When we impose modern Western thought onto ancient Hebraic literature or to ancient Greek language, and we impose modern definitions onto those cultures, onto that language, we are doomed to misunderstand the Bible. So what I've been doing the last couple of weeks is I have been sharing with you the challenge of Christ in light of the book of Revelation. No doubt whatsoever, every futurist eschatology goes right straight to the book of Revelation and says, we are looking for the fulfillment of the book of Revelation. Some will tell us, well, we're waiting, pardon me, we're waiting for the end of the millennium because the Christian age is seen as the millennium. Or we're waiting for the beginning of the millennium because according to the dispensational world and those who believe that the millennium is yet future, the millennium does not begin until the second coming. So we have two contrasting ideas. One, the millennium ends at the second coming of Christ. The other, the millennium begins at the second coming of Christ. But the point being that both of these futurist concepts are based upon the book of Revelation. Then we come to the identity of the enigmatic city of Babylon. Oh my goodness. Who is Babylon? Now, if you want one of the more thoroughgoing investigations of that question, who is this Babylon, then go to my bookstore, go to my website, donkpreston.com or bibleprophecy.com, go to the store and order the book, Who is This Babylon? Now, if you are in the continental U.S., okay, then send me a note that says you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll repay your shipping. I'll refund your shipping. That'll save you $5. Now, I can't make the offer on out of country, out of the continental U.S. Orders. I'm sorry, I wish I could, but shipping cost is just simply too much. But we have, in all three futurist paradigms, we have the view that, well, let's see here. Babylon is literal Babylon in Iraq. And boy, oh boy, when Saddam Hussein was the emperor, the ruler of Iraq, he was trying to rebuild the literal city of Babylon. And we were told by one dispensational pundit after another, this is it. This is proof positive we're living in the last days. Because Saddam Hussein is rebuilding Babylon. Well, we know how that turned out, don't we? We certainly do. Others say, well, Babylon is the Roman Catholic Church. That's the way I was raised, by the way. I think you get the idea that I'm heading toward here, and that is that futurist eschatologies, virtually all of them, go to the book of Revelation to find support for their doctrine. Now, look, I was raised in the amillennial perspective. And It is a first cousin to the Reformed amillennial perspective. Do you realize that the Reformed amillennial view of the book of Revelation never existed before the Pope and the papacy and the Protestantism of Martin Luther and those who followed him? They were looking for, how do I put this? They were looking for ammunition against the Pope. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, some of the language of the book of Revelation, oh, did it ever come in handy? The trouble of it is, their application of it is anachronistic. So once again, all three futurist eschatologies try to utilize the book of Revelation as a key source of support for their doctrine. So what I have begun to do, and again, as I've mentioned to you, we're not going to go through verse by verse the book of Revelation. That would take the millennium. What I'm going to do, I'm going to hit on some of the key motifs, some of the key themes, some of the key doctrines of the book of Revelation, and showing how this key doctrine, that key doctrine, this fundamental theme or motif in the book of Revelation does not support a futurist eschatology, but in fact supports the preterist view, the fulfilled view of eschatology. We spent about 3 or 4 weeks now on Revelation chapter 1 and verse 1, which says the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God, that's the Father, gave to him to show to his servants the things which must shortly come to pass. Now look, virtually every single commentary written on the book of Revelation gives lip service to this text. Shortly come to pass. We are told, well, it doesn't mean it was going to be fulfilled imminently from John's perspective. It means that when it finally gets around to happening, it's going to be fulfilled rapidly. We examined that last week. Or these things must begin to come to pass shortly, but the ultimate fulfillment is far off. That's a relatively common view. What I want to do today is I want to share with you some other passages. Now, we've already looked at Luke chapter 18 and verse 8, in which Jesus said, shall not God avenge his elect who cry out to him day and night? Yea, verily, I say unto you, he will avenge them speedily, shortly. That's from the Greek term en takai, which is the word or the term that is used in Revelation chapter 1, verse 1. These things must shortly come to pass. Now, here's the power of this. If it is true that the Father was telling Jesus to tell John to tell the churches that the vision, and let me emphasize this, folks, it is not revelations as if there is a sequence of separate visions. No, it is one vision that is recapitulated over and over from different perspectives. That's critical to understand. The dispensational view sees the book of Revelations in a sequential order. Well, you got the 5 seals, or 6 or 7 seals. Then you got trumpets, and you got bowls, and blah, blah, blah. But each of those is seen occurring in a chronological flow, consecutively. But you see, that doesn't fit with these things must shortly come to pass, because that would cause us, it would demand that we say some of it is about to come to pass quickly, shortly, and soon, but the rest of it won't be fulfilled for a long, long time, or it would force us to the conclusion or force us to take the position that some of the book will be fulfilled shortly, but not all of it, which is just a restatement of what I just said. But the Father did not say, some of these things must shortly come to pass, but not all. It is a singular vision, a singular prophecy, a singular unveiling of the vision found in the book of Revelation. And again, this is very, very important. So, the Father told the Son to tell John to tell the churches, these things must shortly come to pass. What does these things must shortly come to pass actually mean? Now, like I've shared with you, ladies and gentlemen, the attempts to avoid the obvious, the natural, the normal meaning of shortly are just, they're almost disheartening. And in one formal public debate on one occasion that I was involved in, my opponent said, well, shortly doesn't mean soon. It just means that when Jesus finally gets around to doing this stuff, he's going to do it rapidly. He's going to do it with speed. And I got up and I said, well, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to consider the following with me. I hope you today will pay very close attention. Let's imagine your house is on fire. Now, I've been through that experience. It's not fun. It's traumatic. But imagine that your house is on fire. You grab your phone and you dial 911. And the dispatcher says, can I help you? And you say, my house is on fire. My house is on fire. And the dispatcher says, we'll have firemen there shortly. And you wait. And you wait. And your house burns to the ground. Thankfully mine didn't. Anyway. Now imagine, ladies and gentlemen, the book of Revelation was written to churches, to living, breathing people being persecuted for their faith. They were being persecuted by those who say they are Jews but are not because they are liars. Revelation 3:9. They were being persecuted by those that Jesus described as the synagogue of Satan. Revelation 2:9. That persecution was real. Their goods were being confiscated. They were being beaten. Some of them were dying. They wanted relief. They wanted the Lord to come. And repeatedly in the book of Revelation, behold, I come quickly. En Taxei. But imagine, back in our illustration, the dispatcher had said, we'll have the firemen there shortly. But you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait, and your house burns down. 10 years, 5 years, 20 years later, you're sitting on your porch that you've now rebuilt. And all of a sudden you hear sirens. And you look up and here comes a fire truck. Sirens blaring, lights flashing, and they screech to a halt in front of your house, and they jump out and they start frantically grabbing hoses and hooking lines up, and they run up to your house and they say, where's the fire? Where's the fire? And you go, what are you talking about? My house burnt down 10 years ago. I called the fire department and they said you'd be here shortly. And you never came. And a police or fire police, the fire officer says, "Oh, no, no, you misunderstood. The dispatcher wasn't saying we would be here soon. What they meant was we would just drive as fast as our truck would go once we got it around to coming." Seriously? What a travesty of language. What an abuse of language. You see, ladies and gentlemen, you have to take the first century churches completely out of a context of persecution, of dying for their faith, crying out, "How long, O Lord? How long?" An answer from heaven is, "Behold, I come quickly." And yet we're supposed to believe 2,000 years later, he hasn't come. He did not come. He did not give them relief. What he really meant was, "Hey guys, look, I'm really sorry. You may die for your faith. That persecution may rage on and on and on and on. But I just want you to know, and I just want you to rest assured that when I finally get around to come, maybe a couple of thousand years, and when I come, the church at that time may not even be being persecuted, I mean, we can hope not. But anyway, it may not be being persecuted. But anyway, when I come, I want to tell you, I'm taking the fastest chariot or fastest cloud out of town, out of heaven." Once again, that's an abuse of language. It is an abuse of context. It is an abuse of the book of Revelation. Now, enough of that. Let me show you, in the time left this morning, not much time, how this term, En Taxei, is used. I've already shown you from Revelation chapter 1 how it is used, and it's used in the book of Revelation to speak about the coming vindication of the martyrs, and that Jesus promised the vindication of the martyrs in the judgment of Jerusalem in his generation. That defines En Taxei. Now let me drive that home. Pardon me. In Acts chapter 12, Peter has been imprisoned for preaching in the name of Jesus. He refused, to stop. So they imprisoned him. They beat him, chained him up in a cell. And he's praying, and he's singing. And about midnight, there's an earthquake. The chains fall off. The door of the prison springs open. And an angel appears to Stephen and says, Acts chapter 12, verse 7, "Arise hastily." Now there's the rapidity of action right there. But guess what? That is not En Taxei. The angel, let me read it for you, okay? Let me read it for you. Acts 12, verse 7. "Now behold, an angel of the Lord stood by him, and a light shone in the prison. He struck Peter on his side, raised him up, saying, Arise quickly." And I was confusing another passage with this. This is simply arise quickly. It is En Taxei. Now, I was on Facebook some time ago, and I was in a conversation, a little bit of a debate with a gentleman. He's a hardcore dispensationalist. He denies any time statement concerning the day of the Lord. None of them mean anything. And he appealed to Acts chapter, or he appealed to the use of En Taxei. And he says, I happen to know that Don Preston thinks that En Taxei has to do with how soon an event was going to take place, not the rapidity with which it would occur. And he said, that is absolutely false. He said, let's go to Acts chapter 12, verse 7. And he said, that angel told Stephen, arise quickly and depart. Now, you're not going to believe what I'm about to share with you, but it's absolute truth. I'm not embellishing it. This gentleman then said, En Taxei is not a time statement. The angel was simply telling Peter, get up now. Do you catch the power of that? Do you catch the massive self-contradiction? This fellow was saying, En Taxei is not a time statement. The angel was simply telling Peter, get up now. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, that is a classic example of what I term argumentum ad desperatum, an argument from desperation. There's no logic to it. There is no linguistic validity to it. It is a violation of context. Now, what is the angel telling Peter? Get up now? Well, yes. As in, now is a time statement. And the angel was saying, get up now. Now, let's illustrate this a little bit, and I'm almost out of time. Do you suppose that angel was actually saying to Peter, now look, Peter, I know this prison cell is a really comfy place. I know the rats are your wonderful friends, and the cockroaches, they're that big, and I know it's filthy, but it's a great place. I know you're enjoying your time here, so don't worry about when you get up. Don't worry about when you leave. But here's what I want to tell you. When you finally decide to leave your rats behind and your vermin, I want you to run as fast as you are capable of running. And again, don't worry about when you leave. I'm not worried about when you leave. You can stay here another night, another month. I don't care. Really, it doesn't matter. But when you finally leave, I want you to run as fast as you can. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you know and I know that's false. You also know I am out of time.